We are turning our attention today to Victoria, British Columbia, in Canada. The date we need to focus on is March 24th, 1991.
A Sunday.
A Sunday.
Yeah.
And the location is the Blanshard Elementary School playground. I mean, this is the setting for what became one of the most significant and enduring open investigations in Canadian history.
It really is.
We're looking at the disappearance of Michael Dunahee. And when you look at the history of that region, specifically when it comes to the safety of children and even just the psychology of the community, there's a very distinct line.
There is. A before and an after.
Exactly. There's the era before this date, and then there's the era that followed.
This case fundamentally altered the psychological landscape of Victoria. When we examine the timeline, we're dealing with a period that locals and sociologists often describe as a time of innocence.
Right.
You know, specifically regarding community safety and the freedom children had. Victoria, being an island community, it sort of operated with this perceived insulation from the kinds of major crimes you might associate with, say, Vancouver or Toronto.
A feeling of being separate, safer.
Precisely. And the event we're discussing today, it really marks the end of that era for the community. The psychological shift was, well, it was immediate and it was permanent.
It was.
Yeah.
Let's establish the subject of this file in more detail. Michael Dunahee was born on May 12, 1986. So at the time of the incident, he was 4 years old.
Just 4.
And the physical description from the initial reports is vital, not just for the historical record, but because specific items of clothing have, generated leads decades later. On the day he vanished, Michael was wearing a blue hooded jacket. It had red cuffs. Underneath that, he had on a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt.
Which was incredibly popular at the time.
Ubiquitous. He was also wearing ropey pants and blue sneakers. These details, they were circulated on millions of posters, but they are also just crucial for understanding the visual profile that was presented to any potential witnesses on that day.
That description, and specifically the pop culture reference on the shirt, that's a critical identifier.
Yeah.
It anchors the case in that early 1990s cultural moment, which becomes relevant later when we discuss things like long-term memory triggers and witness recollection. A specific character, a logo like that. It can lodge in someone's memory much more effectively than just, say, a red shirt.
Sure, it's more memorable.
It is. But it also presents a challenge in that those kinds of items were mass-produced. They were everywhere at the time. And that leads to a very high potential for false positives inciting reports down the line.
So our mission here is to construct a chronological, factual reconstruction of this case. The disappearance itself, the immediate investigation that followed, the long sequence of false leads that have spanned over 3 decades, and then the status of the case as it stands today.
And as the records note, this became one of the largest police investigations in the country's history.
It did. We're going to step through the timeline moment by moment. We'll examine the sort of logistical challenges the police were up against and the specific leads that kept this case in the public eye for so long.
It's worth noting the scale right from the beginning. We are looking at an event that triggered the mobilization of an entire police department.
The whole department.
And it generated over 11,000 tips. So the sheer volume of information flow is a central component of this analysis. In a modern investigation, we use data mining and automated sorting to handle that.
Right.
But in 1991, just managing that volume of information presented a huge administrative and analytical challenge. And that's something we have to consider when we review the timeline of the investigation.
Okay, let's move to part 1, the disappearance.
Yeah.
The date, as we said, Sunday, March 24th, 1991. The location was Blanshard Elementary School. The context for the family being there was recreational. Crystal Dunahee, Michael's mother, was participating in a women's flag football practice. Bruce Dunahee, the father, was there as a spectator.
So a completely normal family outing.
A typical Sunday afternoon scenario. The field was active, there were other families present, and the atmosphere was just one of community recreation.
So you have a public setting, a weekend afternoon, and a high volume of potential witnesses. This is not some isolated, remote area.
Not at all.
The presence of a flag football practice implies a perimeter of spectators, other players, just a lot of general activity. Sociologically, this creates what we call a safety in numbers bias.
Okay.
It's where individuals assume that the presence of all these other people provides a protective screen, which can, potentially lower individual vigilance. You just don't expect something bad to happen with so many people around.
Correct. So the family arrived at the school at about 12:30 p.m. And upon arrival, the interaction that really sets this whole timeline in motion occurred. Michael asked his mother, Crystal, if he could go to the playground.
And the playground's location is key here.
It is. The records indicate that this playground was in very close proximity to the field where the practice was happening. We're talking about a distance measured in meters.
Not yards, meters. It was within sight lines, or at least it was perceived to be within the immediate safe zone of the event.
That proximity is the most confounding variable in this entire investigation. Usually in abduction scenarios, you find a significant gap in time or distance. A child wanders off, they're gone for 10, 15 minutes before anyone notices.
Right.
Here, the separation is minimal. The short distance suggests that whatever happened, it happened with extreme speed and stealth. Or it happened under the guise of a normal interaction that just didn't trigger any alarm in the surrounding crowd.
Crystal allowed him to go. However, the case files note a specific instruction she gave him. She told him, and this is a quote, "Stay there and wait for Daddy to come."
A handoff was planned. Exactly. A transfer of supervision was intended to happen almost immediately. Bruce Dunahee, the father, was attending to their younger child, their daughter Caitlin, and the plan was for him to join Michael at the playground in just a moment.
And there's a notation in the reports, isn't there, about the mother's psychological state at that specific moment?
Yes. The record states that Crystal Dunahee had a gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. Despite this internal sense she had, she permitted the short walk to the playground. And it's crucial here to frame this as a documented fact from her statement, not as some kind of retrospective emotional beat.
Right, it's what she reported feeling at the time.
It speaks to the normalcy of the day. She overrode that feeling. It's a common phenomenon in these cases, where routine overrides instinct because the environment just appears to be completely safe.
We often refer to that as the normalization of risk. In a familiar environment, specifically a school zone on a Sunday afternoon with family all around, the cognitive threshold for perceiving danger is significantly higher.
You just don't expect it.
You don't. That gut feeling is noted in the file, but clinically it's indistinguishable from just general anxiety until the event actually occurs. There's no way to know which feelings to act on and which are just everyday worries.
And so, the timeline of the father's movement. Bruce Dunahee proceeded to the playground shortly after that permission was given. We are talking about a very, very brief interval.
Seconds, not minutes.
He was securing the younger child, Caitlin, and then just walking over. When he arrived, Michael wasn't there.
He was gone.
Gone. The window of time in which the disappearance occurred was incredibly narrow. Bruce immediately realized his son was here. He scanned the area, he checked the playground equipment, but Michael was nowhere to be seen.
And the response from the crowd was immediate.
It was, instantly. Approximately 50 people who were at the field, they began searching the immediate area. The game just stopped.
Everything stopped.
Players, spectators, they all fanned out. The parents notified the police without any delay. This was not a situation where, hours passed before an alarm was raised. The search began within minutes of the realization. They checked the school grounds, the perimeter bushes, the nearby streets, an immediate frantic search.
And regarding witnesses to the actual event.
That is the primary anomaly of this case. It's the core of the mystery. Despite the proximity to his parents, and despite the presence of a crowd of at least 50 people, no one saw an abduction occur.
No one saw anything.
No shouts, no struggle was observed, no vehicle was seen speeding away in that specific instant. He just vanished. Given the number of eyes on that location, the statistical probability of an abduction happening without a single visual witness of the act itself is incredibly low.
Almost zero.
Yet that is what the records state.
This lack of immediate witness testimony regarding the act itself, it suggests a very specific type of interaction, potentially one that did not look like an abduction to a casual observer.
What do you mean?
It implies a soft abduction, one where the child is lured rather than taken by force. Or an extraction that was so rapid and shielded from view, maybe by a vehicle or the playground equipment itself, that it just didn't register as a disruption to the environment.
I see.
And the absence of auditory cues, no screaming or crying. That further supports the theory of a lure or perhaps immediate incapacitation.
So let's transition to part 2. The initial investigation in 1991. The police classification of the event was swift. Because Michael disappeared so quickly from such a public place, the Victoria Police Department, or VicPD, they classified the case as an abduction.
Not a lost child case?
No, almost immediately they went to abduction. And that decision, it fundamentally changed the nature of the entire response.
That distinction is absolutely critical for resource allocation. A lost child protocol involves search and rescue patterns. You're looking for a wandering subject who might be hiding or injured.
Right, a grid search.
An abduction protocol, on the other hand, involves criminal investigation resources. You're talking roadblocks, suspect profiling, and the immediate lockdown of transit points. And for a place like Victoria, on the southern tip of Vancouver Island,
Ferries and airports.
exactly. The ferry terminals and airports become critical choke points in an abduction scenario. You have to seal the island.
And the resource allocation was total. All detectives from the Victoria Police Department were called in to work the case. But we have to analyze this investigation through the lens of the technological limitations of 1991. We can't overlay our current capabilities onto that timeline. This was an analog investigation in every sense of the word.
And that's such a significant factor. In 1991, there is no ubiquitous CCTV, no digital license plate readers, no instant communication devices for everyone.
No cell phones in every pocket.
The cellular network was in its infancy, and it certainly wasn't widespread. Information traveled at the speed of landlines and physical paper reports.
The way they process tips illustrates this starkly. The reports detailed that hundreds of tips were arriving every single hour.
Hundreds an hour.
And these tips were being reported on carbon paper. They had to be physically written down, separated into copies, and then sorted manually by officers.
By hand.
By hand. The police station was just inundated with paper. You had officers working around the clock just to categorize the influx of information, let alone act on it.
The friction in data processing here is massive. Manual sorting of thousands of these carbon copies. It introduces a very high probability of human error. Or, at the very least, a significant delay in connecting dots that a modern database would flag instantly.
You mean like connecting two tips that mention the same detail?
Exactly. In a modern investigation, keywords are indexed automatically. A computer can see brown van in tip number 50 and tip number 500 and link them. In 1991, that connection relied entirely on an officer remembering a name or a vehicle description from a piece of paper they might have read 6 hours prior, buried in a stack of hundreds of others.
Police have retrospectively stated their belief that modern technology, specifically video surveillance, DNA techniques, computer systems for sorting tips, it might have solved the case immediately.
It's very likely.
But they were working with the tools of the time. They didn't have the luxury of digital cross-referencing. They were basically building the haystack at the same time they were searching for the needle.
And the geographic scope of the response also presented a major challenge, I'd imagine.
It did. Tips were coming in from all across North America. The total volume of tips received to date, as you mentioned, exceeds 11,000. A reward of 100,000 Canadian dollars was offered to stimulate information.
A huge amount for 1991.
It was. But that high reward amount, while necessary to generate leads, it also has the side effect of generating a high volume of low-quality tips, people seeking the payout. And that just further clogs that manual sorting process.
So in terms of viable leads that were generated from this massive influx of carbon paper tips, what was the primary focus of the investigation early on?
The investigation quickly centered on one specific witness report. A witness described seeing a man in his late 40s or early 50s near the playground.
Okay.
The vehicle associated with this sighting was a brown van. And this vehicle description, it became absolutely central to the public appeal.
The brown van became the iconic image of the investigation. But a brown van is a very generic descriptor.
Extremely.
In the early 1990s, this was a common vehicle type for work or for families. Without a license plate number or some unique identifying damage, the utility of this lead is limited. It's more for exclusion rather than positive identification.
It was, but the description was specific enough that the police staged a full reenactment. A month after the disappearance, they returned to Blanshard Elementary. They used a brown van to try and trigger the memories of anyone who might have been in the area on that day.
A memory jog.
Right. They recreated the scene, hoping that the visual stimulus would unlock a suppressed or forgotten memory from a potential witness who maybe saw something but didn't realize its significance at the time.
The utility of a reenactment is to provide that visual stimulus, to bypass vague recollection. It relies on something called context-dependent memory.
Okay.
By placing the physical object, the van, back in the original environment, investigators hope to trigger the hippocampus in the brain to retrieve details that are associated with that specific visual context. Did this approach yield any results?
The records indicate that the reenactment produced no new leads.
Nothing.
Nothing. Despite the witness report and the high-profile reconstruction, the brown van Lee did not result in a suspect identification. It remains one of the most frustrating aspects of that initial phase. A potential vehicle was sighted, but no actionable intelligence could be derived from it.
So the investigation essentially hit a wall regarding physical evidence and immediate suspects back in 1991. The trail went cold, not from a lack of effort, but from a lack of specific, traceable data points.
Correct. And this leads us into part 3, the timeline of false leads. This period spans from roughly 2006 to 2013. The case remained active, of course, but the leads that emerged during this time were characterized by this pattern of hope, followed by definitive scientific exclusion.
And this period really demonstrates the tension between visual recognition and forensic reality.
Exactly.
So let's look at the 2006 sighting. This was 15 years after the disappearance. So this implies we are looking for a young adult now, not a child.
Right. In 2006, reports surfaced about a young man who was living in the interior of British Columbia. Witnesses claimed he physically resembled an age-progressed sketch of Michael Dunahee, and the resemblance was reportedly strong enough to warrant police intervention. The story gained significant media traction because, the public was so eager for a resolution, and this visual match seemed compelling to those who reported it.
And the verification method in this instance?
DNA testing. The police located the individual, they spoke with him, and they performed the test. The result was negative.
A definitive no.
He was confirmed not to be Michael Dunahee. And this was, you can imagine, a crushing blow to the family and the community, who had really allowed themselves to hope that this resemblance was the key.
And this pattern repeats itself. It really highlights the fallibility of visual identification over long periods of time. As individuals age, facial features change. And while those age progression sketches are useful tools, they're ultimately artistic estimations.
They're not photographs.
Exactly. A physical resemblance in the general population is statistically probable, especially given the sample size of an entire province. Someone is bound to look similar.
Then, 3 years later, in 2009, a very different kind of lead emerged, this time from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So across the border.
Across the border. And it involved a suspect named Vernon Seitz. This lead took the investigation into a much darker narrative possibility.
The geography shifts significantly here, from British Columbia to the American Midwest. What was the connection to this case?
Police in Milwaukee found a missing person poster for Michael Dunahee inside Vernon Seitz's home.
They found a poster.
A physical poster. This created an immediate, tangible link. The question is obvious. Why would a man in Milwaukee have a poster of a missing child from Victoria from 1991 unless there was some connection? And to make it more concerning, reports state that Seitz had confessed to his psychiatrist about murdering a child back in 1959 when Seitz himself was only 12 years old. And he also claimed to have knowledge of another child killing.
The possession of the poster is a distinct behavioral marker. It suggests a fixation, or at the very least, a specific awareness of this particular case.
It's not random.
It's not. However, we have to be careful. A confession regarding an event in 1959 does not automatically link him to a 1991 event in Canada. We have to distinguish between a history of violence and specific culpability in this case. The poster is the only tangible link to Dunahee.
And the investigation into Seitz hit a permanent dead end. Vernon Seitz was found dead of apparent natural causes before police could question him further about the Dunahee case.
So they never got to ask him about the poster?
Never. The link remains purely circumstantial. The possession of the poster and the prior confession, but no definitive evidence connecting him to Michael was ever established. Investigators were unable to interrogate him to determine if the poster was a trophy, a random item he collected, or something else entirely.
So we're left with a physical link, but no testimonial or forensic confirmation. This leaves the Seitz lead in a state of permanent ambiguity. A frustrating question mark.
A huge one. So we move forward to 2011. This is approaching the 20th anniversary of the disappearance. A new report came in about a man living in Chase, British Columbia.
And again, the basis was visual.
Yes, again, the basis of the lead was physical resemblance. The timing of this, coming right near the anniversary, that often correlates with increased media coverage, which in turn stimulates more public reporting.
And the resolution followed the now established pattern.
It did. DNA testing was conducted. The man was confirmed not to be Michael. Once again, science provided a definitive exclusion where visual observation had provided a false match.
So we see this pattern of the public, with the best intentions, attempting to solve the case through visual matching. It's a natural human response to the unsolved nature of the case, but it repeatedly clashes with the precision of DNA profiling.
That brings us to the 2013 incident, which is known as the Canuckles lead. This one originated from a message board on the official website of the Vancouver Canucks hockey team.
So the internet.
The internet. This incident really highlights the role of online communities in modern cold case discussions.
And it marks the shift to digital tip generation. Online forums often serve as hubs for amateur sleuthing, which can be, both helpful and sometimes obstructive to an official investigation.
In this case, a user with the handle Canuckles posted a claim. They said the police were coming to administer a DNA test on someone in relation to the Dunahee case.
A very specific claim.
Very. The subject of this claim was a man living in Surrey, British Columbia. The post was so specific, claiming imminent police action, that it naturally caught the attention of the media and the community.
The public nature of a post like that likely forced a police response, or at least a confirmation. When a specific claim goes viral or gains traction on a high-traffic platform, the authorities often have to step in to manage public expectations and correct the narrative.
And they did. Police requested a blood sample from the man in Surrey. Then, on September 9, 2013, the Victoria Police Department had to publicly state that the DNA test was negative.
Not a match.
Not a match. The man was not Michael Dunahee. So the police had to publicly address and debunk a rumor that started on a hockey forum just to put the speculation to rest.
It's remarkable. These false leads, spanning 7 years, all concluded with DNA exclusion. It demonstrates the definitive nature of forensic science in clearing potential matches that appear viable to the public eye. But it illustrates the emotional roller coaster that the family must endure with every new likely sighting that gets reported in the news.
An unimaginable strain.
Yeah.
So we now move to part 4. Modern era developments. This covers roughly 2020 through to today. This era is really defined by the intersection of social media and advanced forensic techniques like age progression.
The methods of distributing information have evolved again, from posters on telephone poles to internet forums and now to viral videos.
All right. The medium of information exchange changes again here. The investigation adapts to the platforms where the public consumes its content. In 2020, a TikTok video by a user named Shangerdanger gained a lot of traction. The video featured the discovery of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shirt.
The shirt.
The shirt. It was found submerged underwater. The creator specializes in finding items underwater, and this particular find just struck a nerve because of how iconic that shirt is to this case.
And this directly correlates to the clothing description we established right at the start. The collective memory of the public, even after almost 30 years, retained that Ninja Turtles shirt detail. So it led to an immediate association.
Exactly. Viewers and the creator, they tried to match the design of this submerged shirt to the one Michael was wearing in 1991. The Dunahee family was then brought in to review the footage and the item itself.
So they had to look at this.
They did. This required the family to examine a degrading piece of fabric to see if it matched the clothing of their missing son from 3 decades ago.
Which is, that's a grim task. It requires them to rely on their memory of a mass-produced item from 30 years prior, and it necessitates the reopening of that trauma, all for the sake of verification.
The conclusion was definitive. The family confirmed it was not the exact same shirt design.
Not a match.
The lead was closed. The shirt that was found was a different variation of the merchandise that was available at the time.
It does illustrate the incredible reach of modern social platforms in reviving details of a cold case, though, even if the specific lead proves false. It proves that the details of the case are still dormant in the public consciousness, ready to be activated by a relevant trigger.
A very good point. Then in 2021, marking the 30th anniversary, the Victoria Police Department released new materials to the public.
A new push.
A big one. This included a new age-enhanced sketch showing what Michael might look like at age 34. And simultaneously, they launched a dedicated online tip portal. This portal allows for the direct upload of information and tips, which streamlines the intake process completely compared to the methods used in previous decades.
And that shift from carbon paper and manual sorting to a dedicated online portal, it represents the full evolution of the investigative infrastructure.
Night and day.
It allows for much better data management and helps ensure that tips aren't lost in a physical shuffle. Everything is logged, searchable.
Constable Cam McIntyre provided a statement at this time, confirming that the total tip count had surpassed 10,000 by that point. He emphasized that the investigation remained active. The police really wanted to make it clear that despite the passage of 3 decades, this file was not gathering dust on a shelf.
And as we look at the most recent data available,
In 2025, the Victoria Police Department released another new public appeal. The messaging was very specific, very direct. Quote, "All it could take is just one person to bring Michael home." They confirmed again that the investigation remains open. This appeal, it's a strategic reminder to the public that allegiances change, relationships end, and someone who might have held a secret in 1991 might be willing or able to speak in 2025.
the consistency of that messaging over 34 years is notable. The file has never been closed, and from a criminological standpoint, the one-person strategy is sound. In many, many cold cases, the resolution comes not from new forensic evidence, but from a witness who finally feels safe enough or compelled enough by their conscience to come forward.
Let's discuss Part 5, the societal impact and the legacy of this case. The disappearance of Michael Dunahee is cited by so many residents as a loss of innocence for Victoria.
You hear that phrase over and over.
You do. It's used repeatedly in interviews and retrospectives on the case.
And that's a classic sociological shift. Before this event, the community operated with a very high degree of ambient trust. The records indicate a sharp rise in fear and concern regarding child abduction among parents and schools immediately following March of 1991.
It changed how people parented.
It changed the operational protocols of parenting in the entire region. The concept of the free-range child, letting your kid play unsupervised down the street, that was significantly curtailed. Schools implemented stricter sign-in and sign-up procedures. The visual surveillance of playgrounds by parents became much more rigid.
And Crystal Dunahee's role, it transitioned. She went from being a victim's mother to a prominent and very effective advocate.
A powerful voice.
She became the president of Child Find British Columbia. She took this immense personal tragedy and channeled it into creating systemic change.
And her advocacy had real legislative and procedural impacts. It wasn't just about awareness.
No, most notably, the 2002 push for the Amber Alert system. Crystal lent her voice to the RCMP to introduce the Amber Alert system in British Columbia. Her assertion, which is documented in the media, was that an Amber Alert system in 1991 might have resulted in Michael being found.
And she's probably right. The speed of dissemination provided by an Amber Alert counters the timeline issues we discussed in Part 1. If an alert had been issued within minutes of the disappearance, describing Michael and the potential brown van,
It would have been everywhere.
it would have created a net of surveillance across the entire island instantly. The abductor would have faced a populace that was actively looking for them, rather than a populace that was completely unaware a crime had even been committed.
And that system was eventually adopted across most of Canada. It was part of the legacy of this case. Additionally, the community of Esquimalt in Greater Victoria continues to hold an annual event.
Still to this day.
Yes. It's the Michael Dunahee Keep the Hope Alive Fund Run, and it's organized by Caitlin Dunahee, Michael's sister, the one he was waiting for his father to put in the stroller.
That demonstrates such a sustained community engagement, driven by the immediate family. It's a way to ensure that Michael's name and his face remain in the public sphere, which is absolutely crucial for generating that one final tip that could solve everything.
So, to conclude and summarize the facts as they stand today, Michael Dunahee has been missing for over 34 years. The primary mystery remains that he vanished without a trace, despite being meters away from his parents in a crowded public area. No body has ever been found. No credible confession has ever been recorded.
The lack of physical evidence remains the defining characteristic of this file. Without a crime scene, without biological traces, the investigation relies almost entirely on human intelligence. It relies on someone, somewhere, knowing something.
The final status is that the case remains open. The family and the police remain hopeful for a resolution, and they continue to urge anyone with any information, no matter how insignificant it might seem to them, to come forward. Thanks for listening.